This speech has a rather grand title, The New Normal and the Meaning of Life. But it's a lead-in to some more modest speeches. Second part is, what changes do I anticipate as a result of the new normal? How does it affect me? And third speech, how am I going to cope? So what is the new normal? There have been huge changes just over the last 3 years with this whole COVID thing. With the masks, the swab up your nose, the social distancing, the lockdowns, the travel restrictions, and then the novel vaccines, mRNA, never worked in animals. They're trying it in people. They rushed it out in absolutely record time, and they're forcing it on the world with mandatory injections. That hasn't happened before. Now, here in Ukraine, we have a war that started by Russia, where the two of the largest food-producing countries in the world, and it raises the specter of starvation. And some people are rubbing their hands, and Western governments are participating by attempting to drive farmers out of business and grab their land. There's widespread unemployment. With COVID, people simply couldn't go into small businesses, and those businesses are folding. Of course, the governments are lying about unemployment rates, as they have become accustomed to doing, but unemployment has been high. And we have a loss of freedom. I might not be able to post this video anywhere I want. I've had a video I made on doctors, all of it true, called Down for Misinformation. Boy, it's been proven that I was right and they were wrong, but I still can't put it up. And lastly, we have a depopulation. It's been going on for 50 years. I'll get into this more, and now it's become accelerated after COVID. The new normal is really changing things. There's a couple of things that seem to have floated down from on high that are affecting corporations all over the world and governments. DEI and ESG, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and environmental, social, and governments. DEI, you might rearrange those letters, you get IED, improvised explosive device. That's what the military terms bomb. And this might be intended to blow us up. Or DIE, it might be telling us to die, which I think they would like. And then there's ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. It's all about governance. It's all about telling you how to live. Telling your company to tell you how to live. There's widespread depreciation of us white people, of European descent, who made the modern world with our science and our industry and so on. We're all of a sudden very unpopular. We're the great Satan. We're the enemy of mankind. Although I don't know how, we're no worse than anybody else. We're being presented with all sorts of agendas that are against the population, that are for depopulation. The gay and transgender agendas, and there's a pedophilia agenda, and around the corner, bestiality and polygamy, and Lord knows what else. Everything against the traditional family, against reproducing ourselves and carrying on our culture. Also in this vein, there's legalized drugs. Now, there are a lot of illegal drugs that they're simply not enforcing the laws on. Those would be heroin, cocaine, and so on. But then they're legalizing drugs. First we had Quaaludes, and now we have OxyContin that created a whole generation of addicts. And now they've legalized marijuana and made it about 10 times stronger than it was when I was a kid, so that people are getting psychotic and going on shooting binges. Also helps with depopulation. People get shot, and other people don't particularly feel like having kids. It's not a world you want to raise kids in. You have burgeoning debt. The headline news is student debt, $1.7 trillion, undischargeable in bankruptcy. And you have mortgage debt that is unrepayable. That's because the price of houses has zoomed up because they're manipulating interest rates down, or they did for a long time, to get you on the hook. Now it's going back up, and now you won't be able to repay it, and the loan-to-own lenders are waiting to repossess everything. Oh, and there's car loans in there too. So questions, how do you cope in this new world? What do you do? The first question to ask is, what do you want? And I'm going to tell you now about my meaning of life, which is probably different than yours. So what you and I do may differ, and our politics may differ. But let me tell you what my objectives in life are. The objective of this speech: share my perspective, possibly win you over to my perspective, and make this as a lead-in to the other couple of speeches about what changes are coming and what I'm going to do about it. Let's start out with evolution, and I see what's happening as a product of evolution. Evolution brought man to the top of the heap. In the world of 200,000 years ago, there were several types of ape men. There were us Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and the Hobbit people of Indonesia. 200,000 in all, and 2 million chimpanzees. A visitor from Mars would have thought that the chimpanzees were going to inherit the place. But then Homo sapiens learned how to talk. That changed everything. The speech brought better hunting. We could cooperate. You go behind that tree and I'll chase the deer this way and you can shoot them. It brought better warfare, which we first used to render extinct those Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other people, whoever they may have been. And then we turned on ourselves, and we became better and better at warfare. Just here in Ukraine, 3,000 years ago, there were the Tripoli people, who were farmers, I guess fairly peaceful. And then came the Scythians, and the Sarmatians, and the Goths, supplanting one another, each one better at warfare than the preceding. We got better at teaching. We had more to teach. Mook could teach Og how to make an arrowhead, and then how to make a sword, how to make a boat, how to plant his wheat. You needed speech. Speech helped to do these things. And lastly, you got more help from Mom. Apes have babies about every 6 years. This is chimpanzees, gorillas, because Mom has to do the whole job herself. With humans, it's different. A mother human can, using speech, gets her mother, her sisters, her teenage daughters, and even the men of the family to all pitch in to help with the baby. We can have babies every 2 years. Our population exploded after speech. Did other things too. It strengthened the tribe because we're able to cooperate better than before. It permitted trade. We were able to deal with other tribes. See, they had some obsidian that we wanted to make arrowheads. We had mangoes that they wanted to eat, so we'd trade. And along the way, we needed to codify a system of ethics. In-group ethics, how do we treat the people in our tribe and our family? We're helpful to them. We help them when they're sick. We feed them when they're hungry. And out-group ethics, we cheat them when we can. We kill them when they're not looking. And this was the ethics that governed human society until quite recently. Agriculture increased our numbers. Children were useful for work on the farm and for herding animals. And more than that, children grew up to be warriors for tribal defense and for expansion, because we had more people and we were always rubbing up against other tribes. So whoever had the most kids and could raise them to be good warriors had the advantage. Along the way, we got smarter. We had more interactions with other people, and we became specialized. The smart people did things that other people couldn't do, such as make good boats, make good shields, make good swords. There was a premium for these specialists. And we broke the Dunbar number as we traded with one another. The Dunbar number of 150 people, the most individuals that an ape or a primitive man could recognize. We had to deal with more people, and we learned to do it. We learned to deal with strangers. Along the way, we got smarter. See, that red line there shows how our brains grew from 350 cubic centimeters when we parted company with the chimpanzees up to 1.5 liters almost today, a 4-fold increase in the volume of our brains. That's the red line. Now this blue line shows the rate of increase. Went up 25-fold. The greatest increase in brain power of any animal ever in history. And just the last millennium is off the charts big in how our brains grew. However, there's a downside. My son's biology book says that the ability to reproduce is the key to life, and we have sort of forgotten how to reproduce along the way. Cities curbed population growth, starting in 3000 BC with Sargon of Akkad in Mesopotamia. As people move to the city, they're no longer tribal. They treat one another, they're individuals. They're not members of a family so much. And they're not interested in reproduction. Without tribes, it's everybody for himself. Our philosophies bear this out. Now, these are a bunch of slides on philosophies that I stole off the internet. The first 4 are kind of pre-city philosophies. There's natural pantheism, care for nature, worship the deer god who brings us meat, worship the coconut god who drops food from the sky. And then there was theism, that's our religion, the Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Follow God's will. And God's will in the Old Testament was smite thine enemy and be fruitful and multiply. Taoism, follow the way, that's in Asia more than here, but it's kind of the same message. And then there was Confucianism in China, which told you explicitly that you owed it to your parents to have children, to pass on the culture and to pass on your genome. All that changed with cities. It went from a tribe and a family to individuals. And I'm showing here a whole series of philosophies, once again from the internet, but they all emphasize the individual. They don't emphasize family. They don't emphasize your obligation to society. It's fulfilling your personal desires. Postmodernism brought more of the same. It's not even called a philosophy. What we're looking for is comfort, happiness, and entertainment. Does that describe your life? We see globalism replacing tribalism and nationalism, and we celebrate it because nationalism had people fighting one another. We believe in diversity, equality, and inclusion. And from that we conclude that our children are nothing special. They're just like everybody else, so other people's kids are good enough. We don't need to bother having our own. And believe me, kids are a lot of work. I say that from experience. We forgot about reproduction. It used to be that the spillover from the countryside, the people who believed in those first primitive religions, would populate the cities. But now that the world is more than half urban, they're not doing that anymore. Our philosophies tell us to live for ourselves. They don't tell us to sacrifice for anybody. And notice that the Russians are having a terrible time getting people to come here to Ukraine to sacrifice for acquiring a bit more dirt. They don't need it, they don't have a population, and the people don't want to sacrifice for their society. That's worldwide. I'm not saying people should come here to conquer another country, but they should be invested in their own people, I think. Generations of people have lamented this, and still there hasn't been any change where these philosophies persist. It's evolution. We change the environment, we build boats, we bring agriculture, and then we change to suit the environment. We get smarter, we change what we do, we change how we live. It's evolution. Things get worse, at least in the eyes of the old folks. And people have been talking about it forever. Cicero said, "O tempore, o mores," the times, the morals. And that was 2,000 years ago. Imagine what he'd say today, the purple-haired things walking around with piercings and doing drugs and all that. He'd be disappointed. I don't know if he'd be surprised. So what's my purpose in life? I'm a tribal man, one of the few that's left. I believe that having children represents success and perpetuating my genome. My genome is represented by people like me throughout the world, and particularly throughout this society of Ukraine. The genetic distance, by the way, between Ukrainians and people like me isn't that great. Frank Salter said so in his book on genomic interests, on genetic interests. I have a video review. I'm going to flog it here. He's representing my way of thought, Frank Salter. Perpetuating my tribe. So my concern, once again, is my genetic interest, my kids, my genome, and my culture, what's left of it. And here's my plea as I close. If kids don't interest you, and I think that probably applies to half the people I'm talking to, then you don't have a stake in the future of the planet. Global warming, if it were real, wouldn't affect you. Wouldn't affect you because you have no kids. You have no future here. And questions of sexuality and so on don't affect you. You have no kids. That's somebody else's life. So please leave it to us who do have a stake in the future of the planet to worry about the future of the planet. I look forward to my next couple of speeches.